Welcome to Millennial episode 732. I'm Andrew.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Pamela.
So I went to New York City last week and I saw Bruce on Broadway. And Laura, I was a little disappointed actually. Laura told us that when she went to a New York City bar just 2-3 weeks ago, we just missed each other by like a week, I think. You went to the gay bar Flaming Saddles and they wanted to see your vaccination card. I was not asked about my vaccination card going into restaurants or bars up there. I was so mad because I wanted that experience, but Bruce on Broadway required them, and I did have to show it there, and I felt good showing that. And because I wanted quick access to my vaccination card, I had it in like my breast pocket, so I could just, here it is, and I didn't want it in my jean pocket because I thought it would get smushed there. I thought it would be nice and safe in my breast pocket. Well, it was a long day. We were in New York City for a good 12 hours, kind of in and out. We didn't stay the night. So we got back home to our place in New Jersey around like 1:30 in the morning. I left my vaccination card in my breast pocket. I didn't realize it at the time. Well, guess what happens? I was in New York City. I'm going to wash that shirt.
Oh, no.
I put it in the wash, still not realizing the vaccination card was in there. I look at it the day after. I look in the pocket. It's crumbles. I thought it was cotton. I didn't even think it was the vaccination card. My mom started looking at the pieces and she found one tiny little piece with a single letter on it. I was like, no, my vaccination card. Laura, you were right. I should have gotten it laminated. But to be honest with you, that just seemed so nerdy that I didn't think I needed to.
Well, what are you going to do now?
I don't know. I do have.
Can you what would be fucking hilarious is if like Biden or somebody, or even just somebody in your state, Nevada, or whatever state you're in right now, announced a vax card mandate. Like you can't go in anywhere unless you have your vax card. Andrew's like pulling over at a gas station, like, I really have to pee. And they're like, sorry, man. Like, I guess you can go piss on the dumpster out back.
Well, that's what we have in San Francisco for indoor venues right now. I was out there on Friday, and I'm happy to report that every place I wanted to sit inside asked for my vaccination card. But now
what a world.
I've been keeping it in my wallet. Now I'm paranoid about, it getting lost. So I think that because of your cautionary tale, I too will make a copy.
That should be my recommendation this week, actually. I didn't think of that. But yeah, so I did take a photo before my big road trip.
Oh, okay.
Because I knew this could happen, but I'm wondering if I can go back to the doctor's office and be like, can you just rewrite the card? Like, they must have a record that I was there.
I'm sure they can do that for you. I'm mainly just teasing. It's like, can you imagine how chaotic it would be?
Yeah.
If the approach was like, well, unfortunately, we have no record of you doing this, so you're just going to have to do it again.
Yeah.
But then you would be quadruple vaxxed. So like, is that such a bad thing?
Right.
It's true.
Well, now the Biden administration has announced plans to get people a third or second prick. And I'm wondering what do I do if I don't have my card? Are they going to write me up a new one?
I will tell you that I have a friend who forgot to bring her vax card for her second dose. And they just wrote her a new one. And it sucks because now she has to carry both of them.
Oh, yeah, that does suck. Damn.
Yeah. But it's good news for you because it means that they'll just write you a new one. But I don't think they can fill it out with the old information, which kind of sucks. Or maybe they can.
Yeah. Or maybe I should just go make a fake and put all the same info down.
Didn't somebody get arrested for that? Trump flying into Hawaii?
I mean, I would never do that. Tracy said something my dad said too. I should just hand over all the crumbles of the vaccine card and be like, here it is. If anybody asks, you wanted it? Here it is.
Elizabeth in the Discord is pointing out, they looked it up for you actually, Andrew, that you can obtain a copy of your immunization records from the Nevada WebIZ public access portal.
Oh,
so
great.
There you go.
Elizabeth, can you fill that out for me? You probably know everything that you know my birthday. No, I'll look this. This is great. Thank you very much. I appreciate this. I'll see if this works later. But so like I mentioned, the Biden administration announced that Moderna and Pfizer Americans can receive shot number 3 beginning beginning in September, 8 months after your second vaccination. Johnson & Johnson takers will likely be encouraged to get a second shot, but they're currently waiting more data. Also, on Monday, the Pfizer vaccine got full FDA approval. This is very big news, especially because some Americans may have been waiting for full FDA approval. If those people are out there, that day is here now, so it's time to get it. But we also learned something interesting today. With the full FDA approval, the Pfizer vaccine now has a real name, and it's Comirnaty. Comirnaty.
Oh.
It's really derpy.
I know. Moderna's name is going to be way better.
Moderna's name is cool as fuck. Wait till you all get a load of this. It's Spikevax. How cool.
That's fucking cool.
That is cool.
Team Spikevax over here. You know, Moderna has
we lose our Vax cards.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I feel as though there's been, and it's completely unjustified because this just isn't science, but I feel like anecdotally on social media, on the internet, there's been like a hierarchy of vaccines, and Pfizer always kind of gets the glory because it's Pfizer, right? Well, now I'm like, okay, Comirnaty or whatever.
I think that's the way you pronounce it because people were making community jokes. Comirnaty. God, it's so lame.
I'm very proud to have taken the Dolly Parton vaccine. Thank you, Dolly.
Wait,
I should have named it after her.
No, I think the Dolly one is the Moderna one.
I thought Dolly. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I got Moderna.
Oh, I thought you got Pfizer.
Mm-mm.
I thought this whole time you got Pfizer, and I was like, oh, look, each person on the panel got a different one. Okay, never mind.
See, that would have been really fun. I should have done it. I should have, when I rolled up, I should have been like, hey, Kroger, like, I understand that you're giving Moderna, but you've got to have some Pfizer in here, right? Like,
I'm on a podcast, and we're each trying to get a different vaccination for science.
Did I ever tell you guys that when my mom went, they asked her which shot she wanted? She thought she had a choice. So she said, oh, I guess I'll take, I don't know, whatever name. And then they said, no, the answer is you're going to take whatever we have. And we have Moderna. So here you go. And I was like, that's kind of mean.
Hey, but now she's got Spikevax.
That's true. Now she's got Spikevax.
I feel like that name is brilliant because it might make some people want to get it. You know, they know Americans well. Give it a cool name and they'll come out for it. Spikevax.
Yep, this is where we are.
Hey, whatever works. I mean.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Are y'all excited to get prick number 3, or in your case, Pam, number 2?
Yeah. So I think, well, now I'd have to look at the photo of my vaccine card to figure out when. Well, you would know, Laura, because we got ours around the same time.
Yeah, it'll be December. For us.
Okay. So that's my Christmas gift.
Well, I don't know. I guess it depends on the research with J&J if it's going to be around the same time or if I'll have to wait a similar timeline for you guys. But I mean, like, I guess I'm looking forward to it because extra protection. But I was down for the count with just the one.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it hit me super hard, so I'm not looking forward to that. Like, I was out for 3 days.
Yeah. Well, so it will be interesting to see what the symptoms are with the second or third shot. I'm sure some people might wait it out a little longer past that 8-month timeline to see what the side effects are. Maybe they're going to be less.
I want it as soon as possible because there are still so many stupid fucking people. And we just don't have any idea what the efficacy is going to look like beyond that 8-month mark at this point. So jab me.
Yeah, daddy, again. What I'm looking forward to most, actually, is just going to my local pharmacy because we traveled pretty far to get that first vaccination. And of course, we returned to the same place to get the second one. So now that they're more available in the US, I'll just, we could practically walk to get our shot, which will be nice.
Well, shifting gears here, I wanted to, I guess, provide like a mini recommendation, but I feel like I can't steal this one because it was really Pam's recommendation to me. I texted her about this a few days ago because I was so excited. I went to Dunkin' and I was ready for some of that pumpkin flavor. But as I mentioned on last week's episode, pumpkin spice lattes are just way too sweet now. I feel like they didn't used to be as sweet as they are now. So I pulled up at the drive-thru. I got a large cold brew with oat milk and 2 pumps of pumpkin. And oh my God, it was so good. Scratched the pumpkin itch, wasn't too sweet, got me in the mood for the season. Still cold because, it's fucking hot outside. But yeah, it was delicious. So if you are like me and Pam and you can't handle overly sweet pumpkin flavored coffee, that is a good one to try.
I was very excited about this text message.
Oh, she
because I had forgotten. She texted me, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, all caps, Pam, I just tried it.
Yeah, I was very excited because I had forgotten that they had pumpkin back. So now I know, and I too can go to Dunkin' and scratch the pumpkin spice itch.
So we actually have 3 big topics to speak about today, all pretty big stories, at least in our world. We're going to talk about OnlyFans. We're going to talk about this Jeopardy drama, which I've been raging about all week. There's so much that went wrong, so we'll talk about that. And then we're also going to talk about these new child safety features coming to Apple's iOS 15. It's a big deal in the tech industry, big privacy questions there. So we'll talk about that. We don't have any advertisers this week, so this is a good time to remind you that your support on Patreon greatly helps us out. It makes us less dependent on advertisers and helps us focus on the show. And soon we'll actually be using your support to help market the show and find new listeners, which I'm very excited about because it's hard to get the word out about podcasts. So thanks everybody who supports us on Patreon. And if you don't yet, we would love your support. Patreon.com/millennial. One of the benefits, and this is probably one of my favorite benefits, is we have listeners listening live every week. We have a lot of people in our Discord right now who are sounding off as we record. It's a really great experience for us, and I assume the listeners, but for us, it's really nice hearing from people as we are recording because podcasts can be so one way. We're just talking into these mics to each other, and that's well and good, but it's great to get this real-time feedback. And coming up in After Dark today, we each have a little story to tell. What do you want to call it, Laura?
Yeah, it's a story time after dark.
I feel like After Dark's also been gossip central lately. Like there's been a lot of stories. I had a story about my brother I didn't want to share because I was at my parents' house. My dad was like, "Don't go and tell this story on your podcast." So I didn't want him hearing me tell this story.
Right.
On the
and
podcast.
You were like, "Yeah, Dad, I totally won't."
No, Dad. Wink, wink. Little does he know, we save this stuff for Patreon. I didn't even want to tell him that because if I told him that, he'd still be like, please don't. So anyway, patreon.com/millennial. You get Mega Millennial, which is ad-free millennial with After Dark on one file. So you can easily listen to all of our content each week. So let's talk about OnlyFans. OnlyFans announced a ban on sexually explicit content on their platform. And this was really shocking because the sexually explicit content was what put OnlyFans on the map. We've mentioned OnlyFans over the years. It's gotten increasingly popular. They generate so much money. And when we found out that OnlyFans was going to remove sexually explicit content, we were all like, did they learn nothing from Tumblr? Tumblr removed all the porn. They were worth over $1 billion. And just a year or two ago, they had to sell for $3 million because nobody uses Tumblr anymore. So the big question was, why the hell are they doing this? Why are they shooting themselves in the foot? There's been some more reporting on this, and OnlyFans has commented a little bit as well. Their credit card partners and financial institutions were threatening to no longer work with them if they didn't remove the sexually explicit content. Why did the credit card partners and banks want out? There's a major thread on this that we're going to link to in the show notes. I thought it was really well done, and it gets into the nitty-gritty of the issue. The TLDR is credit card processors are increasingly concerned about working with this type of content for a variety of reasons, including the legality of some of the content. You know, maybe there's minors on the platform, and obviously they don't want to be working with a company who has, underage sex on their platform. But also, MasterCard has new rules going into effect that require not only fully verifying every user and every person who appears in every adult video, but also review all posted content before publication, including real-time review of live streams. OnlyFans does not want to do this. They don't want to verify every user because they have thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of users posting content. They don't want to have to verify the age of everybody in every video. You know, some of these sex workers, they're posting orgies. OnlyFans doesn't want to go and verify the age of every single person in every one of these orgy videos. They just don't want to deal with this. So they're out. Nudity will still be allowed on the OnlyFans, but it can't be, you know, you can't have boners, you can't have buttholes. Like, they have a bunch of rules that are putting it much more, you know, professionally than I am right now.
Wait, how is a butthole inherently sexual? Like, if somebody's just showing their butthole?
They mentioned anal. I'd have to pull up the language.
So maybe they mean like anal
intercourse,
sex acts.
right?
Yeah.
I feel, I don't, while you two are talking, I'll look this up again. Maybe I'm wrong, but.
So it sounds like they just want like tasteful nudes.
Yes.
But nothing else.
Which is what Patreon allows as well, by the way.
Right.
So this issue actually goes even deeper. And again, you need to check out this thread. Religious groups are alleging that sex trafficking is occurring on these platforms, even when that may not actually be the case. So there's a lot going on. There are a couple of OnlyFans competitors out there. I think one is called Just for Fans. And I've seen talk of some other ones launching in light of this OnlyFans news. But the thing is, it seems possible that the other platforms will have to ban sexually explicit content as well due to MasterCard's rules. But also Visa can jump in and be like, hey, we're going to have the same rules as well. Or any of these other credit card companies. So it's hard to imagine a scenario where OnlyFans or these other competitors to OnlyFans are going to be able to host sexually explicit content over the long term. One reason that this is all so aggravating is that sex workers are constantly attacked, but sex workers and online creators, they work for themselves. We work for ourselves, which is great, but we are constantly getting metaphorically fucked by these platforms who have us under their thumb. Facebook can flip a switch and stop showing your content. Patreon can be like, we don't like what you're doing, you're done. OnlyFans can say, hey, no more sex on our platform. We do work for ourselves, but we also don't, because we have to work with these big companies and they can all screw us whenever the hell they want.
Yeah, I think what really is salt in the wound here is, I mean, you can make the argument that these are all private companies and they can dictate what goes on their platforms. You know, they could decide that they didn't like whatever on their platforms. In this case, the prevailing wind is the credit card companies, right? They're allowing that to influence what they show. But on the other hand, what sucks with OnlyFans is that the sexually explicit content is what catapulted OnlyFans to success. That is what made that platform so iconic and recognizable. And now when the chips are down, they're walking away from it. Now, I recognize it's a lot more complicated than all of that. Like, I wish it were just as simple as, you know, a fan creator site being able to approach this ethically and say, fuck the credit card companies, but they really can't.
Mm-hmm.
What form of tender can people use to pay for this without their credit card? I mean, Bitcoin?
I know.
Yeah, I was going to say it would have to be like cryptocurrency, right?
Right.
How long will that last before that stuff starts getting regulated?
I think, like Laura, it's kind of a shame for a lot of people that we're finding quite a deal of success on this platform. Not necessarily just, you know, celebrity creators. I know we talked about this when Bella Thorne came in and screwed everything up for a lot of people, but also just for the average person that you know was making good money off of OnlyFans. And it does kind of feel like a step back for anybody that identifies as a sex worker, because there's been a lot of talk about how people that are in that industry should also be respected. And this was an easy and kind of a safer way for them to make money and still participate in an industry that would be qualified as, you know, some form of sex working. And now they don't have that. So it's kind of like back to square one.
By the way, update on the butthole question. I pulled up their new rules. You can't post any exhibition of the anus or genitals of any person which is extreme or offensive. But where's that line when it comes to a butthole? I mean, what's an offensive?
I mean, where's that line when it comes to genitals at all?
Mm-hmm.
Like, can I not create an OnlyFans and upload a picture of like a Roman statue? Like, they're naked.
No,
their
I
genitals
think
are exposed.
Right. Well, but is that extreme or offensive?
I guess it depends.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Pam brought up the point earlier about tasteful nudes. I mean, who gets to define what makes nudity tasteful versus offensive?
Right. And their line is going to be really stupid. It's going to be soft versus hard. When it comes to dicks, it's going to be soft versus hard. Like, that's it. And I don't know how they're going to determine that with women. Like, I guess a woman can post a nude, but if she's using a dildo, that's off limits.
Yeah, I feel like women's bodies are way more policed usually than men's.
Mm-hmm.
So
always.
Yeah, I just have a feeling there's going to be more red tape there.
Your nipples were too hard. We have to remove this.
Yeah, Loyalist Lord in the Discord said exactly what I'm thinking. They said it's vague on purpose so they can judge however they want.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, all these creators, I think, are just going to leave OnlyFans. They see the writing on the wall. Right. They're going to run into some issues where they post something that they believe is tasteful. OnlyFans believes it's over the line. So a lot of these people are going to move to Just for Fans or some of these other ones that are going to be popping up. These sex workers, they can also go to porn sites, but I know there can be a lot of issues around working for the studios, exclusivity, the rules, the work.
Yeah.
OnlyFans was great. You shoot yourself having sex and you make money off of it. And these people make so much money. A lot of these people, because when their fans are horny, they don't care if it's $20. They're signing up.
Yeah.
It's really been great for them.
Something that occurred to me was I thought, why doesn't Pornhub offer to just buy OnlyFans?
Well, they got in trouble too. Now
they're a part of this as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, geez.
They only work with verified creators now. I can't go film a video with Pat right now and post it tonight. You have to get verified on Pornhub first.
Well, you could always be like, hey, I'm a blue check on Twitter, so I'm real.
Not on Twitter, on Facebook.
Oh, excuse
me. I wish
I
was verified on Twitter. So that's what's going on there. Such a big story. We were talking about this in our Slack when it broke. We were shook by this news. I mean, OnlyFans is synonymous with sexually explicit content. So I feel for all the sex workers who have a very difficult path ahead because it doesn't end with OnlyFans. This is only the beginning.
Well, speaking of other shocking news that really got us going, apparently Mike Richards is no longer going to be hosting Jeopardy. I can't remember if we talked about this on the show or if we talked about it separately, because as we've said before, Andrew and I are pretty big Jeopardy fans. So we were obviously very invested in this. And, the fact that they made it seem like one of these super famous guest hosts could potentially take Alex Trebek's spot full time now that he's passed on was really kind of getting people excited to see who was going to be the next host. And then all of a sudden it turned out that they were just going to pull an executive producer to come in and be the permanent host. And it just kind of felt a little lackluster. So anybody that was equally disappointed about that can rest easy knowing that he's actually not going to be taking over the job after all. But it was pretty shocking that he stepped down nevertheless. And he did so because a bunch of past misogynistic comments came up and resurfaced, as things do usually when anybody kind of gets thrown into the limelight. All of these were uncovered by a publication called The Ringer, and they were made by Richards about women, the homeless, and a couple of other groups as well on a 2013 episode of this podcast called The Random Show. The clips have since been removed following the release of the report, but it didn't take long for Richards to step down. He sent out a memo to staff on Friday morning when the news broke, which read, quote, "Over the last several days, it has become clear that moving forward as host would be too much of a distraction for our fans and not the right move from the show." He's still going to be an executive producer, so that's kind of weird for anybody who takes over the job after him. And you will be able to see one episode featuring him as the host because they banked that previously. So that's going to be the premiere episode, I believe, on September 13th.
And I think, Pam, it might be a week of episodes because they actually filmed 5 episodes in a day. Maybe they did a couple less because it was his first day. But what cracks me up is he films a day of episodes. The next day, he decides to step down. You know what happens in that premiere episode? He walks out and says, it's the honor of a lifetime to be the new host of Jeopardy. They're going to have to re-record that. Now he's going to have to take a walk of shame up on stage and re-record and be like, hello, it's me, a guest host again, here for a week. It's like, it's going to be, I can't wait. I can't wait to see this re-recorded intro.
Be glued to our TV screens at 7 p.m. on September 13th.
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah.
I really feel like he gave like the Andrew Cuomo resignation style here. Like, no apologies. No, I'm really sorry for what I said. I've tried to learn and evolve, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, I think this would be a distraction, so I'm stepping down.
But here's what drives me nuts about this. This was his podcast, The Random Show, that he recorded in his office at The Price is Right between 2013 and 2014. Did they not vet him at all? Shouldn't somebody have listened to all of those episodes before appointing him as the permanent host of this iconic game show? This was a major fuck up by Sony.
I guess that's what happens when you have major pull. You know, he's already a decision maker.
Right.
And it is kind of insane, though, that he just got the job so easily, it seemed.
Right. And this Ringer story also kind of implies, at least to me, that he threw the competition in his favor. Ken Jennings, for some reason, had 2 weeks less hosting than he was supposed to. And the Ringer goes into that a little bit. And who replaced Ken in those 2 weeks? Mike Richards. He may have tried to wiggle his way in, so he had a shot at becoming the host of Jeopardy, because he had said, by the way, also on this podcast, he said he could never be a contestant on Jeopardy. How do you appoint somebody who admits that? Like, yeah, most of us could probably never be a contestant on Jeopardy because we're not that smart.
No.
But that's not somebody you
Right.
make the host of this show.
No. No, you want somebody that looks like they know the answer
Right.
to all of those questions.
Right.
That like reads those questions with, you know, an air of somebody that already knows the answer without looking at what's written down.
Yeah.
And dear listener, let this be a wonderful reminder that people in all levels of power can really suck at their job. You are not alone when you suck at your job. The heads of Sony fucked this up so badly. It is truly unbelievable. These people in high positions of power can't vet somebody for one of their most prestigious shows. I'm speechless. I truly cannot believe this type of thing happens. These people are paid so much. This studio, Sony, is a legendary television studio, and they forgot to vet him. Anytime somebody has a podcast, especially a white man, you gotta vet it, because there's probably some trouble in there.
I find this very interesting because I feel like this is not the first time we've had this conversation on the show. Wasn't there an incident with SNL a couple of years ago where they hired a new cast member?
Yeah.
And almost immediately had to turn around and release him because it turned out that he had been doing a lot of, like, quite frankly, racist and sexist stand-up routines. And it was to a point where it wasn't, I remember watching some of it and it was clearly malicious. Or at least that's how it came across to me. Clearly, that's how it came across to the people at SNL and to a lot of viewers who were protesting this person. And I just found myself at the time thinking, did you guys not vet him? Did you guys not watch anything that he produces? Did nobody go to any of his shows to see what he would be like?
Mm-hmm.
It sort of seems like executives in these cases are kind of hoping that these instances will fly under the radar and nobody will notice. But that's just not possible in this day and age where everything is cataloged and documented and you can find everything that someone has done.
And when there's sites like The Ringer that are going to dig, especially when it's a choice that isn't very popular. Nobody wanted Mike Richards. Like, he
Right.
did a good job in his guest role, but nobody was excited about that choice. To Pam's point, they tried out all these celebrities, and we thought maybe they would pick one of those. But like I also said a couple weeks ago, this is a life sentence, becoming the host of Jeopardy. If you have any respect for this show, you're going to stick with it until you die. It's like being on the Supreme Court, just much lower stakes. And
Being the
so
Pope.
I think a lot of these celebrities don't want the lifetime commitment, which of course I understand. In terms of who should take it on now, here's another development that occurred over the past couple weeks. And I know I'm speaking very passionately about this. Like Pam said, I mean, we live for 7 o'clock on weeknights. We don't miss an episode. There's this report on the New York Times. Alex Trebek called Ken Jennings 2 days before his death to discuss becoming a guest host. Alex Trebek also left Ken Jennings his cufflinks in the Jeopardy studio. Alex wants Ken Jennings to be the next host of Jeopardy. The audience loves him. I know he's a white guy. It's not the most inspired choice, but he is, like I said a few months ago, the heir apparent. You just got to go with Ken. Let Mayim Balak still host the primetime events like they announced, but just give it to Ken. He seems like he wants it. He'll take on that lifetime role.
I would be fine if it was Ken Jennings. And I think most fans of Jeopardy would also be happy to see him, succeed Alex Trebek. But if they want, I'm also happy about Mayim being involved because she's also genuinely a very smart person. She did a fantastic job. She's really funny. She's a fantastic choice for what they want her to do. And it makes sense that she might only want to do the primetime stuff because I don't know if it's going to go to series, but I know that she's already working on another pilot with her Big Bang Theory co-star, Jim Parsons. So it's possible that she still wants to do some acting stuff. And it sounds like it would be the best of both worlds. It would be the best of both worlds for her.
What a beautiful disaster. This has been very fun to watch. I mean, Mike Richards is here. Wait, Mike Richards is gone. Just like that. Thank you, Internet.
Well, since you mentioned the internet, I feel like that's a great transition to talk about a tech story. We're all longtime Apple users here at the show. So I wanted to bring up Apple's upcoming iOS 15 release, specifically the expanded protections for children that will be baked into this update. The goal here, according to Apple, is to curb the spread of child sexual abuse material, along with explicit photos of minors. Apple does provide this information on their site, but they did have to quickly release an FAQ to address some of the privacy and security concerns related to these expanded protections. To give everyone a little bit of a nugget, in their FAQ, Apple says, "We want to protect children from predators who use communication tools to recruit and exploit them and limit the spread of child sexual abuse material." Now, before we jump into details about how these protections would work and some of the concerns that have been raised, I want to make it abundantly clear that here at the show, we support the intention behind trying to stop the spread of child sexual abuse, grooming, and abuse of any kind. I want to make that very clear because we certainly don't want criticism or concern related to this update to be conflated with any opinion to the contrary of that. So with that said, there are a couple of key items that Apple announced as part of its expanded protections for children. The first is communication safety in messages. In a nutshell, for iCloud accounts that are established as a family account, the parent or guardian account will be able to opt in to turn on this feature, the communication safety feature. It would allow parents on the family account to receive a notification if a child 12 years or younger sends or receives a photo of a sexually explicit nature. That is determined by an AI, an artificial intelligence, to read those photos. Children younger than the age of 13 will receive a warning that their parent's account will be notified if they are to send or receive such content, while children 13 or older would only receive a warning about the risks of sending and receiving such material. So I'm just interested in getting like first impressions of that, particularly considering, I mean, we're smartphone users, but we're also the one and only generation that knows both sides of, or rather like knows both sides of what it's like to live with and without technology. Like none of us had smartphones when we were 13. So we remember what it was like to live without them. But we also know how complicated features like this can be when it comes to people's privacy.
Yeah. Look, it can be a very helpful feature. But you have a quote here that we can maybe get into in a moment when it comes to LGBTQ plus youth. I think there's an expectation when it comes to certain features on our phone that those things are truly private. They're between us and the person we're communicating with, or our photos, getting to another issue we're going to talk about. Like those are ours. They're not being looked at by other people. So from that perspective, it does concern me. And I think what's going to be happening in the years to come is that there's going to be this shift. There's going to have to be a shift in what we believe is private on our phones, because features like this will continue to come into existence over time. There's been a lot of pushback here. But honestly, like I'm very split on these new features because I do see the pros and cons.
Me too. I think one of the things that concerns critics about, I mean, not just this feature, but all the features we're going to talk about today is the Pandora's box effect. So maybe we're all comfortable with the idea of saying, yeah, if a child under the age of 13 is sending or receiving any kind of sexually explicit content, their parents should be notified. Let's just make it very simple and say, yeah, I'm good with that. How do you feel potentially about what the trickle-down effects of that could be for privacy of messaging communication down the road? I mean, this opens the door to other potential changes in the way that we think of privacy when it comes to our personal messages to and from each other. And Andrew, since you brought up the quote from the VP of Technology of the Trevor Project, would you like to share that?
Yeah, he commented on the impact that this could have on LGBTQ plus youth who aren't ready to come out to their parents yet. He said, "We've advised various technology partners in the past about how they can ethically incorporate potential safety monitoring features in their products without intruding on youth's privacy. That might look like a notification that does not share any additional information such as a photo or a classification of an image or other content." So I guess what he's saying is give the user notification that the content they are about to view might be inappropriate, but don't notify the parents.
It's hard for me to put myself in the shoes of a 12-year-old who might be questioning their sexual identity, right? But I would have to imagine that if you were and you had a friend who was an appropriate age to be discussing this topic with, I would have to imagine that particularly for LGBTQ youth who are not ready to have that conversation, they're not ready to come out for their parents, that something like this could be pretty damaging. Additionally, India McKinney, who is the director of Federal Affairs at the Electronic Frontier Foundation, said, "We all deserve privacy. We deserve private thoughts. We deserve private communications, including children and teenagers." And on its face, see, and this, again, it's where I'm split. On its face, I agree with statements like that. I think that children and teenagers, I don't think that there should be an expectation that they can't have private thoughts. But at the same time, given the dangers that are present, particularly on the internet, and how easy it can be to come in direct contact with a child in that way now. It didn't well, I'm not going to sit here and say it didn't used to be that easy. It just used to be very different. Now it can happen with a few strokes of a keyboard from halfway across the world, right? So I understand the push and pull that is at play here.
It's also just kind of hard because I think that it's very easy perhaps to remember what it was like to be a teenager and think that, you know, you should be entitled to privacy, feel like perhaps you're more grown up than you really are. And I think a lot of this is like, it's perspective you gain when you get older, when you realize like how terrifyingly easy it is to be taken advantage of. And I think all of us would have agreed that, you know, at 16 years old, maybe even younger, that we would have wanted our privacy. But just with how available smartphones are to young users and how accessible social media is to young users and how easy it is to, you know, strike up relationships with people online now, I don't think there's like a right choice to be.
No, I think
like
it's
made here,
immensely
you know, like
complicated.
Yeah, exactly.
And further complicating it is a question that Caleb brought up in our Discord that we should also make clear. This feature only works with the Messages app on iPhone. It doesn't scan Snapchat. It doesn't scan WhatsApp, anything else. So somebody can contact that child another way through Instagram, Facebook. Another issue here is that this doesn't even really solve the issue because it only works in Messages, the app.
And it's also important to point out again, I think I mentioned this earlier, but it is an opt-in feature. Mm-hmm. So if parents are on a family plan with their child and they do not want to participate in this, they don't have to.
Yeah.
So it's not the same thing, but it kind of reminds me a little bit about like the COVID trace testing that is available in iOS on the iPhone. It's like, what's the point if not everybody's opted into it? Like, how much good will it do? And then you get into a conversation of, well, if it prevents even one child from being exploited, isn't that good enough?
Right.
So I understand. Like, I feel very internally conflicted about this. But I will say the next part of Apple's approach is probably the most contentious part that I've seen discussed online. The second update involves scanning photos for known child sexual abuse material. Now, this specifically relates to photos that are stored in iCloud. So if Apple detects 30 or more images that match an image database maintained by the National Center for Missing or Exploited Children, or the NCMEC, the iCloud account will be shut down. Apple will then conduct a human review of the material to verify that it is indeed what has been flagged. And if they are able to confirm that these are known images of child sexual abuse material, then it will send a report to the National Center for Missing or Exploited Children, at which point authorities would be brought in. It is worth noting that while Apple is not required to do these kinds of scans legally, they are required to report if they find material like this. So legally, now that they're doing this legally, they are required to do that reporting, which is a good thing. Mm-hmm. But it brings concerns up for people who are just frankly uncomfortable at the idea of their personal photos that they may store in the iCloud being subject to this kind of scanning.
Right. And something else here, and this is getting very technical, but Apple is not actually looking at your photos. They are looking at a hash of that photo, a digital code, so to speak. They're trying to match that hash with a hash from CSAM. But a lot of people, I think, are rightfully wondering if Apple is actually looking at their actual photos.
Yeah, and I will say Apple, in their FAQ, they make it very clear that images of children featuring innocent nudity, as they refer to it. So think of like your kids' bathtub pictures, for example. Those wouldn't be caught up in this because they don't contain those hashes, right? So they wouldn't be a match for anything in this abuse materials database. That said, and kind of to the point about, are we happy with our photos being subject to scanning at all? I'm wondering, do we currently store our photos in iCloud?
Yes, it's extremely convenient.
Yes.
Yep. Same.
The other problem is with Apple devices, and maybe to a lesser extent Android devices, you can't really escape using the cloud anymore. You can use it for iMessages as well, so they're all in sync across your devices. You use it for passwords, to store the passwords. Use it for your calendar. Like, there's no avoiding the cloud at this point.
Especially if you want to easily back up your device wirelessly. Remember the old days when we all had to use a computer to physically back up our phone? Yeah. Nobody does that anymore.
Right.
And I mean, there's so many conveniences that come with storing photos in iCloud. I mean, even like album sharing is a huge thing. Like if you're trying to share pictures with people, way easier if you're trying to share a fuck ton of pictures with them to create a shared album and just add them to the album than to send them 8,000 photos over text message. So there is a level of convenience that I'm not sure many people would be willing to give up, even if they felt some kind of way about this update.
Right. Yeah, no.
I'm wondering, though, is there ever a time where we could see ourselves stopping sharing our personal photos to iCloud?
No, because the convenience is too great. I mean, they have that 30 image threshold, which I think should assure some people that if there is a false positive, it's not going to just take one to flag you.
Right. Why 30, though? I just wonder where they got that number from.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, now that we all know that this feature exists, won't these people who have this terrible, terrible content on their phone in their iCloud just delete it? They can just go and print it out or something. Like, where there's a will, there's a way. Like, this isn't going to stop the issue. It's just going to stop the content from being hosted on their servers, which I understand is a problem.
Yeah.
But
well, I suppose part of the motivation here could be that Apple is such, I mean, they're so ubiquitous, right? Like, no matter what corner of the globe you go to, you're probably going to find someone with an iPhone. So it could be that their thinking is, if we make it really hard, impossible, or just inconvenient to host this content here, people will no longer use Apple's platforms for storing and sharing this kind of content.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see that being part of it. I will say an area where this has been very concerning for a lot of folks is that kind of Pandora's box potential for what this could mean in the future. So some have expressed concern that the feature could be used by tyrannical governments to force Apple to try and identify non-CSAM images to go after minorities or political opponents. So one example that was given was, what if, say, in a country where homosexuality is punishable by death, this country tries to strong-arm Apple into helping them identify images depicting homosexual sex acts and then using that as a way to punish people. And it's another area where, like, I would love to be able to trust that would never happen, but I don't know that I could give someone that guarantee. I mean, we've seen Apple do really well in this realm, and we've also seen them do not so well.
Right.
It makes me think of like the remember the ISIS attack in San Bernardino a few years ago, when Apple was like, the Obama administration was trying to really strong arm Apple into giving them access, giving the FBI access to these attackers' phones. And Apple was like, no, it's none of your business.
We won't make a back door. But this basically creates a backdoor.
Yeah.
And then another good example is China. Apple does big business in China and, of course, makes their products there as well, at least some of them. What if China comes to Apple and says, hey, we don't want any images of Tiananmen Square, for example, being in your cloud or on anybody's phones? Apple can say no, sure. But then China can say, well, you can't sell your phones in our country anymore. Once you create that backdoor, that Pandora's box, you open yourself up to potential battles like this.
Yeah.
So that, to me, that's the most concerning part about all of this. Apple did stand up to the authorities, and when it came to San Bernardino, I think the FBI was able to make a backdoor anyway.
Right.
But you just can't create these yourself.
Yeah, I think something else that's also concerning, and I'm so glad you brought up China, Apple actually bowed to the Chinese government's pressure and moved some of its servers there. So presumably the Chinese government would be able to have some power of influence over being able to see what happens with those servers, what's on those servers.
100%. They do. And Apple says they don't, but they do.
Yeah. And I think what bothers me about this is they address this in their FAQ, this whole concern about what if a tyrannical government tried to do this. Their response is to say Apple would never do that. And it's kind of hard to take them at their word, not because I don't think that they don't believe that. I think that probably Tim Cook in his heart of hearts probably believes that, but they're a company and we've seen companies shift over way less in the past.
You know what? I can't even buy their public facing comments, any of them anymore, because remember we discussed this Fortnite case a few months ago. All these emails came out showing internal discussions between high level Apple employees. And it's always all about the money. They, for example, have never brought the Messages app to Android because they know that by keeping it Apple exclusive, people will want to buy Apple phones. They know that people don't want to be the green text in a group chat or a one-on-one chat. So they keep Messages exclusive to the iPhone. This is laid out in plain language in these internal Apple emails. They just care about money. And if China threatens to stop working with them, they're going to say, we can't. We can't lose China.
Well, because that's where they manufacture the phones.
Yeah. So. And they sell phones too. I mean, it's like...
I mean, anytime you order an iPhone and you see where it's shipping from, it's from China.
Right. Yeah. So it's very disturbing. And by the way, another reason that this was all botched by Apple is that Apple announced the CSAM detection and the community safety and Messages in the same blog post.
Yep.
They were conflating everything.
It did create a lot of confusion. I mean, I know I was reading that some people thought that the CSAM hash comparison was happening with your text messages, and that's not how this is working. But it's completely understandable why people would think that based on the way this information was released.
Yeah. I want to make two more quick points on this. When it comes to communication safety and Messages, one thing I think people get confused by is they own the phone, but they don't own iOS on the phone. Apple can do whatever the hell they want. You do not own that software. They are leasing it to you. You get to use it because they are letting you use it. You don't have to use it. You can go somewhere else if you want. That's why they can get away with scanning messages of children and alerting parents. And then on the CSAM detection, I have just come to accept, and I think a lot of people need to do this, anything that they do on their phone, on their computer, near these devices as well, is not private. You just have to operate thinking that every single thing is being reviewed by Apple or any other website or app that you use. I know it sucks, but that's where all this is going, if it's not already there in some cases. So I just live my life online knowing that information can get out there one day, you know?
Yeah.
And by living that way, I don't get myself in trouble online.
Well, I mean, you're also a good person. I mean, clearly this is not intended to target someone like you. I think the real challenge here is that as a culture, like, and when I say culture, I'm referring to the entire like global tech consuming culture. I think a lot of people are under the mistaken impression that their iPhone or whatever smartphone they use, because don't get it twisted, like, you could sit here and say, well, fuck Apple. I'm going to switch to Android. Sorry. All the big tech companies are doing stuff like this. Apple just gets a lot of attention because they're Apple.
And because they're conflating all this information.
Yeah.
And because the way they're handling some of these new features is very problematic, as we've been discussing here.
A lot of people operate under the mistaken impression that their phone is like their wallet, or maybe your personal diary that you handwrite in, that if you're monitoring it carefully, that nobody else would be able, like reasonably, nobody else would be able to gain access to it. And that's just not the reality. And I agree with you that people need to rid themselves of this notion that anything they do online is going to be private, because it's not.
And by the way, here's another big issue. Apple, in ads, for at least the past couple of years, have been saying, literally, the tagline in the commercials is, what happens on iPhone stays on iPhone. That is not, the case
true.
with these two features. Not the case. So it'll be interesting to see if they continue using that language. Because if they do, that'll be deeply fucked up. And it wasn't even really true to begin with. So you know, another issue here is they're misleading people.
Yeah. Well, we could all just get Freedom phones.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that doesn't have any problems.
I do agree, though, that it is scary to think that, you know, somebody somewhere is always keeping tabs on you. But it's also just really important to know. It's kind of like the false security of the incognito windows. Like, it'll help you when you're trying to book a flight. But at the end of the day, you know, your internet provider still knows what you're looking up on those anyway. So
definitely.
Yeah, it really seems that this kind of information should be included. Tech literacy in general is just something that needs to be taught. I know some schools do this. Not all schools do. It's not a consistent thing. But people really need to understand the internet's a really powerful tool, but there are also some really powerful consequences for how you use it and if you're using it correctly, right? I do want to bring this full circle, though, back to the concerns for child protection, because I agree that I think that there is a moral obligation on behalf of these platforms to try to do something to make sure that children are safe. I wish that I had the right answer. I wish that I had the answer that would safeguard children, cut down on the sharing of this kind of content and the attempts to groom children without scaring people or making people feel taken advantage of, or quite frankly, rolling back on previous privacy promises. I mean, Apple loves to talk about end-to-end encryption, right? But this has raised that question for people. Is this that?
Right. I don't know.
Me neither. And I think it's really important to be able to say, I don't know, in the face of topics like this, because I'm seeing a lot of commentary on both sides of this where people want to say, you don't give a shit about privacy. You're going to allow the world to dissolve into tyrannical rule, and it'll be all your fault when it happens because you supported this. And then there's the other side that's, if you value security more than you value a child's safety, then fuck you, you know? And I feel like it's a much more nuanced conversation than that. So I'm glad that we were able to talk about this. We really barely scratched the surface today. I think we could have like a whole series of episodes on the topic of privacy and security and ethics in tech. And that would be fun, but ethics, we don't have time for that today.
Also, we just don't want to get too technical. Not that we're experts on this, but
no,
like we're trying to be mindful, I think, of our audience not being, extremely tech savvy and nerdy. Like I listen to some tech podcasts. They spend an hour, 2 hours talking about this issue and really getting into the nitty gritty, like the hashes, for example. And just closing point, another reason this is such a big deal, and I know other platforms already scan images for problematic content,
yes,
but
they definitely do.
But another reason this is a big deal is because all these tech companies love to follow Apple's lead. Apple introduces features and Android rips them off, and vice versa too. They all copy each other. So anyway, my point just is Apple is getting the ball rolling here with, especially point one, communication, safety, and messages, and others might follow.
And I have to say, I'm not a parent, but if I were, I would completely understand the inclination to want to receive a notification if my child were sending or receiving explicit photos, right? Like I empathize with that so much. It just also feels very complicated.
Yeah, I think one solution would just be to limit who they can communicate with. I know Facebook has a messenger app for kids that allows that. Maybe some others do as well. I don't know if Apple allows that right now. They might. Then again, an issue, and of course this is a very dark thought, but, if God forbid, the uncle in the family starts sending your child, a dick pic or something like that. The idea of limiting who your child can communicate with through messages suddenly isn't enough because somebody within the family could be doing it. Changing gears now, let's get to some recommendations. Pam, you have an Apple one.
I do have an Apple one.
I'm sorry.
I just want to... It's okay. Actually, even my After Dark story kind of really weirdly fits into the theme of the show.
What
so
an
I
Apple
guess we're just
fangirl.
Yeah, I just want to recommend Ted Lasso season 2. And if you're not subscribed to Apple TV Plus, season 2 ends sometime in October. And so I would recommend just signing up for a month just to binge this. It's so delightful. And I was kind of worried that, season 2 wouldn't be as good as season 1, but it's still just so incredibly delightful.
I've only seen one. I need to watch more.
It's so good. It's fantastic. So I highly, highly recommend that.
Here's a little money-saving tip for some people. T-Mobile just announced today that customers can get 1 year free of Apple TV Plus. And if you're one of the lucky people who has a PlayStation 5, you can get 3 months free of Apple TV Plus. So if you have either of those, there's a way to save a little money and follow Pam's rec. I want to recommend a Spotify feature called Daily Drive. This is one of their For You playlists, but it's pretty clever. It's a mix of music and news, personalized to you and updated every day. So I've been on the road the past few weeks. I checked this out. It basically creates a radio show just for you because it jumps between news and music. It starts with a new episode of NPR's daily podcast, the one that's updated like multiple times daily with the latest news. Then it plays you some songs. Then it plays another short podcast for you, and so on. I thought this was a really clever idea. Whether or not you have a commute, you can just turn this on at home and listen to it. Get some news, get some of the music you love, all in one. Thank you, Spotify.
I have a recommendation for something that can be both stylish and functional if you're looking to upgrade your living space. If you're getting a new ceiling fan, I would highly recommend a ceiling fan by Hunter. That's the brand that I got my new ceiling fan from, and it's so quiet, but it also produces so much airflow in my place. Like even if I leave the bedroom door that it's in open, I can feel the coolness like radiating out of that room. So highly recommend. And as far as ceiling fans go, they're pretty affordable if you're looking for something that's not like the cheapest of the cheap.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to today's episode. Couple of reminders. Make sure you're following the show for free in your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, we would appreciate a review. Do contact us by writing directly to millennialshow@gmail.com or by using the contact form or anonymous confessional on millennialshow.com. If we got anything wrong, no offense to Laura, but anything I said about the Apple topic today, please do let us know. It's
why would I
like
be
Laura's,
offended?
well, in case Laura fucked up, please write in. That's why.
Oh yeah, that's fine. Listen, I love it that people check us on stuff when we maybe miss the mark on something, or if there was an additional perspective that we didn't get to add. I really love it when we get those notes from people. So hit us up. I'm probably going to regret that.
No, the only reason I brought it up is because it is a very complicated issue.
Oh, 100%.
I still don't have a full grasp on it yet.
Me neither.
And finally, follow us on social media. We are Millennial Show on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We're going to get started right now with After Dark and our little storytime gossip corner. Thanks, everyone, for listening. I'm Andrew.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Pamela.
Bye.
Bye.